All right, welcome to the Young Turks. Jake Huger, John Irola with you guys on another day filled with chock full of news.
There's chocks everywhere you look.
That's right. In the second hour, we got a story about how some of the right-wing groups might have planned to run over protesters before the Charlottesville march.
The goal was to run over protesters.
Amazing. And then we've got some Republican infighting with Chris Christie and Ted Cruz, which is fantastic. And then the defense secretary basically saying the transgender ban, maybe not so much.
Except maybe.
Except maybe. So it's a fun and exciting show as usual.
Yes.
And John has come from north of the wall.
Yes.
He is now the three-eyed raven. He can tell you not only what happened today, but what will happen tomorrow.
Yeah. Except if the plot needs it, I won't think of something until the last minute.
Oh, that's certainly true. All right, Johnny Pie, take it away.
Before we jump into the news though, I do want to say, so I'm back temporarily. I've still got close to another month that I'm going to be going out. I'm going to be going back up to the Arctic again. But in the interim though, I did want to thank one of the TYT viewers, Alexandria Drake, who we thanked originally, donated the drones that we're using on this project and that will eventually be used on many TYT projects. But so I was out for almost 4 weeks already, and we used those drones everywhere for dog sledding and on the ships and on the coasts and on the fjord and the glacier and everything. And I've seen some of the footage and it is amazing, and it's all due to Alexandra Drake, who made that donation to TYT, and so we wanted to thank you again. We're not even done yet and we're already getting a ton of use out of it, so thank you.
Okay, and so thank you, I agree with that wholeheartedly. And also must be noted, John's beard, which he's going to keep because he's going back to north of the wall if the wall still exists. I'm
gonna be honest, I'm looking at the screen right now and I look like a crazy person.
Yeah, no, a little bit. Yeah. Yep.
I can't cut it though. Continuity.
I was going with Viking. I don't know if this was a right-wing critic or not, but they saw your beard and they apparently liked it and said, "Oh, good, John lost his virginity."
It's like as soon as, boom, the hair starts to spring out. It's like, I should have had sex earlier. Anyway, if I knew there was hair in it. Anyway.
Okay. All right, anyway.
I'm getting uncomfortable. How you doing?
Well, you're back, brother, you're back.
Yeah, it's good to be back. It's good to be back.
Let's do it.
Okay, unfortunately we're starting off on a very serious note. Hurricane Harvey continues its devastation and flooding today, after hitting both Port Arthur and Beaumont, Texas last night. We're gonna start off by showing you this map to give you an idea of some of the movements of the storm and also the intensity along that path. You're seeing there as it hit Corpus Christi, this is obviously previously, hitting category 4, retreating, going back in towards the coast as a tropical storm, retreating and again making landfall. This is early this morning there on sort of the dividing point between Texas and Louisiana. And so, I mean, obviously the storm center is moving off, the rains and flooding continue, but there's no relief because you have a short period where it moves a little bit back out towards away from the coast and then it comes back in. The storm, as I said, made its second landfall at 4 a.m. This is early today west of Cameron, Louisiana, near the Texas border. Harvey is expected later on to move northeast, gradually weakening and becoming a tropical depression by Wednesday night, although some storm, some rain will continue on, it's believed, through Thursday. And that is just the beginning of the eventual recovery, of course, because we're still in a terrible situation in basically the 4th largest metropolitan area in the entirety of the US, still around Houston, and now Louisiana, which is in some ways even less capable of dealing with the damage that this storm will do, even though it's at a lower intensity level now, is now in its path. I want to update you on some of the numbers though. More than 32,000 people were in shelters in Texas as of today. 1,800 people have been moved from shelters to hotels and motels. I've seen numbers ranging from 8,000 to 10,000 rescues that have already been conducted by both Houston officials, police departments, the Coast Guard, the Navy, and volunteers, of course. Unfortunately, the devastation has been bad. Local officials have reported at least 38 deaths related to or suspected to be related to the storm. And I want to give you an idea of some of these. The victims include a police officer who died on his way to work, a mother who was swept into a canal while her child survived by clinging to her body, and a woman who died when a tree fell on her mobile home, and a family that is believed to have drowned while trying to escape floodwaters in a van. Because as many people have accurately pointed out, evacuation can save lives, but evacuation can also take lives. And it is itself an incredibly dangerous process that can expose people trying to get away from the floodwaters to any number of other dangers. We have some other developments that we want to talk about, but this is the current state of the storm as of right now.
So as you hear those tragic stories, it's heartbreaking. There's some stories of rescue, of course, too. 3 people got pulled from a tree where they had found shelter, and they were hoping that people came by and to rescue them, and they did. And then they found a 6-year-old who had been separated from his parents. Imagine the terror in that kid as there's flood water everywhere and he can't find his parents. Thank God they found him and he's okay and the family's okay now. But as you heard from John, some of those families are not okay. So local citizens there saying things like, quote, "I've never seen anything like this." Well, you're not alone. It's the worst rainfall and storm we have seen in a long time. In fact, it broke the record for rainfall of a single storm anywhere in the continental United States, and is about to break the record for one in Hawaii as well. And it's 51.88 inches in Cedar Bayou and east of Houston, which is an unreal amount of water. So, look, we know what caused this. Yes, there are storms throughout time. That's of course part of the planet, but the storms have gotten worse. So what scientists explained in explaining climate change is that storms would get more severe.
Yeah.
And here we are in a storm that is more severe. Yeah. They say it's a 500-year flood. It is not. There was a flood similar in Louisiana. And again, Louisiana hit today, just last year. And there'll be another flood the year after that and the year after that. And each time they'll call it a 500-year flood and they'll pretend that it's not connected to anything else. They'll say, well, golly gee, look at what befell us. It's not golly gee, I know what befell us, it's climate change. So climate change doesn't cause every storm. It makes some of the storms far more severe, which is exactly what happened here. And the scientists told you that the sea levels would rise, and they did. Near Houston, it has risen over ½ a foot over the last several decades. Well, when you have a ½ foot more sea level, you'll have more flooding. And when you have storms that are more severe, you'll have more flooding. And they told you that the temperatures would rise and the sea temperature would rise. And when the sea temperature rose, you know what the scientists predicted? You would have more moisture, because this is a matter of science. And they know that what happens when things get warmer. One of them is more moisture. Yeah. And voila, here it is. So don't pretend that we didn't know it was coming. So every news reporter that covers this as an individual event, oh wow, look at this, what God or luck brought us. It is not God or luck, it is the fossil fuel industry. Now there are other things that contribute to climate change, but that's a giant one. In this case, luckily, it also hit the fossil fuel industry. Now, right-wingers get very upset when you mention that. I've already had right-wingers write columns saying, no, but the scientists can't be right, Cenk, because, and how did they disprove our facts? And in their rebuttal of me, they said, oh, we asked the American Petroleum Institute, and their lobbyists tell us that the scientists are wrong. And then they triumphantly declare like, ha ha, got you. No, that's insanity. Of course the world's scientists are more accurate about science than oil lobbyists. So no, I do not shed a tear for the oil industry. I shed a tear for all those people who are devastated by this flood, partly caused by the oil industry. So, and in terms of the people whose jobs, first of all, no jobs have been lost yet. Some of the refineries have been knocked out for a week or longer. So then the oil lobbyists come in and all their paid right-wing hacks write about, oh, now you're celebrating job losses. That's not remotely true. Again, you didn't use any facts, you just went to oil lobbyists because that's who pays you to do propaganda. And second of all, yes, solar jobs are now ascendant. There is a lot more of them. In fact, there's more solar jobs in America than coal jobs, but nobody ever talks about that because all you get is propaganda. It doesn't mean if an industry is displaced that nothing will ever replace those jobs. But yes, fossil fuel leads to climate change, which leads to Hurricane Harvey. If you don't like that fact, your problem is with science and facts and not with me or anyone who's bringing you that message.
Yeah, and to the extent that you watching this video should be concerned about those refineries being hit, it's that short term it could have a negative impact on a lot of American families that are nowhere near Hurricane Harvey or the areas that are being flooded. I mean, something like a quarter of the American refining capacity has been knocked out, at least temporarily, and God only knows how many weeks or months it'll take to get it back, back on track. And that means that prices theoretically could go up for Americans. But yeah, as Cenk was alluding to, I mean, there's a lot of reasons that climate change can make storms worse. I'm not gonna go into all the science, although we talk about it constantly. You can watch an Inconvenient Sequel if you wanna see a lot of it. I mean, the simplest thing is that warmer air holds more moisture. And so when a storm hits, there is simply more water in the air. And that's why you can break records for amount of rainfall. So we shouldn't be surprised by that. And one other simple thing is, we're obviously worried about sea level rise because we see the pictures 50 years in the future, 100 years in the future of islands that'll be gone and American cities that will be flooded. But the problem with sea level rise is not when Manhattan is covered in water. That's not the problem. The problem starts decades earlier than that, when flooding becomes much more likely and much more severe because the water is higher to begin with. It's not when the levees burst that is the problem. It's in the anticipation of that. And climate change is already threatening us as it has for Houston.
Yes, and so I want to reiterate our petition here, tytnetwork.com/Harvey. It's graphic 24. So the reason I want you guys to do this is because those lobbyists are out in full force right now. And what they're gonna do is they're gonna take the human tragedy. They're gonna hide behind those men, women, and children who were killed in Houston. And they say, oh, that's why you got to give us bailouts for the oil companies. No, we help our brothers in need, okay? Wherever this flag is flown, we take care of our own, but that means actual human beings. So we're not going to be monsters like Ted Cruz, we're gonna help the people of Houston. But if those oil companies that caused climate change in the first place come crying to us that finally they're paying some of the costs they created for the entire planet, our answer to that should be hell no. So the petition we're asking you to sign is, under no circumstances should these oil companies get $1 of taxpayer money in any kind of subsidy or relief afterwards. So you made this problem, you pay your own costs. And yes, right-wing idiots, that's called a free market. You created the cost, you pay for the cost. We're not gonna do socialism here where we just give all this money to the oil companies who started the problem in the first place. No, we give money to human beings, not to corporations. There should be no federal, local, or state government aid coming out of US taxpayer pocket going to those oil companies for those refineries. None, not a dime. Make sure you sign that petition so that our legislators know, tytnetwork.com/Harvey. We got to be united in speaking about this. If you're in Houston, that money should go to you and not the company who created the mess in the first place.
Yeah, and I want to turn to one of the other threats. Obviously, there are any number of threats for those affected by the flooding, the people who are still in Houston, the surrounding areas. But the water holds many threats of its own, not just from the amount of it, but what's in it. I mean, there's things that you might already know, like the fact that contact with floodwater puts people at risk for diarrhea-causing bacterial infections, Legionnaire's disease, mosquito-borne viruses. And those sorts of problems, by the way, are not simply going to go away once the rain goes away. I mean, there's going to be standing water in areas where it isn't normally there for literally months going forward. Molds are going to grow for years going forward. So that's a very real threat, and it's being taken seriously. But there's some new threats particular to this area and this storm. And it has to do with toxic chemicals and other sorts of things that are not supposed to be in the water now being flooded into it. Toxic sites include the Brio Refining Superfund site in South Houston. There's river waste pits in San Jacinto, and the Crystal Chemical Co. site. And so it lists some of the toxins there that I'm not going to try to pronounce, but that are going to theoretically from these sites be leached or dumped into the water, then transported through the water through what become toxic rivers down the main streets of Houston. And then once the water finally goes away, those chemicals, those toxins can then settle in areas where you might not expect them. I mean, you're looking at possibly in like ball fields and parks and places where kids congregate, in stores, in people's homes. And so that is a problem that is going to need to be taken seriously in the months and years after this storm. Now, the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality told the Washington Post that their employees have taken steps to secure contaminated sites prior to the storm. But we're talking about many sites, and we're talking about areas that didn't necessarily have much of a warning before this storm hit. And so I think it needs to be taken very seriously, the threat that a variety of different contaminants and toxins could even now be being transported all around Houston and other cities in Texas and soon Louisiana.
Unfortunately, more bad news. So just in July, we had the first case of Zika virus in the Houston area. Now, with mosquito-borne illnesses that could be rampant in a situation like this, the threat of the Zika virus is greatly multiplied in the Houston area. Furthermore, Legionnaire's disease, very dangerous. And that you can get from inhalation of airborne moisture droplets. So you don't even need to drink the tap water, it's airborne. And that's potentially deadly. Now, there's a great irony here, which is that the more water you have, the less usable water you have. So the areas where they get the tap water and the clean water get flooded by the dirty water, then you can't use the tap water. So on top of all the human damage that's already been done, 30 people killed at least so far, 30,000 or more displaced. Well, you now have a situation where all the local residents, not just in the affected areas, but the ones that drink that water from the tap, have to boil all the water and then use it or just get drinking water that's bottled water. I mean, it is an absolute nightmare. Think about how you take showers, how your kids are gonna brush their teeth, and you think about all the ways that these people will be affected, and then the mold sets in where the flood has been hit. And that could last for years and years and years and have more health consequences. So this is a total nightmare for Houston.
Yeah, and so it's been great to see people from around the country, obviously, like sending both money, but also things that people need that are still stuck there. People who are in temporary housing outside of it. I saw earlier today, TYT contributor Sean King was helping to organize that by spreading a list of things that are needed, things that you might not normally think of. And that's great, but people need to buckle up for the long haul because many of those people who left are not going to be able to go home in the end. Even once the water goes away, their apartments will be uninhabitable. Many people will find that they've lost their jobs because businesses will be destroyed. And there are people who are gonna need help, not just for the next week, but going off into the near and medium term.
So one more time, this is not about climate change that might happen later. This is climate change. It just happened. It hit Houston and it hit it really, really hard. It's hitting Louisiana today. But this is exactly what the scientists predicted. Go back, look, whether you want to look at a popular movie like An Inconvenient Truth or The Inconvenient Sequel, or forget, just Google it, just go online. You don't trust liberals, go online. Just find any scientist not funded by the American Petroleum Institute, and they will tell you that. And don't look at what they're saying today. Look at what they said a year ago, 2 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago. In fact, look at what the ExxonMobil scientists said back in 1979 and 1982. That's a story we just covered last week. Turns out there's some great investigative reporting and they found the internal documents. The Exxon scientists say it's going to be catastrophic. And Exxon buried all that research. Why? Because in the short term, they wanted to make the money and put the costs on you. Well, America, these are the costs of climate change. These are the chickens coming home to roost. So don't dislike or want to take out your aggression on the messenger or on the scientists. They're not the bearer of bad news. They were trying to warn you so this wouldn't happen.
Yeah.
But the government and the bribed officials and the representatives took all that oil money and disregarded the warnings. And this is what happens because of it and the human toll that you see all over Texas and Louisiana now.
Yeah. Let's talk briefly about some of those costs, how some of those costs will be paid, and some of the politicians bearing the brunt of it, of their past hypocrisy. Senator Ted Cruz continues to get hammered over his 180 on disaster relief funds, and it's not just the Democrats or mass media that you might expect actually attacking him, although there is a bit of that as well. So in this first clip, you're gonna see him attempting to explain when a host on, I believe it's MSNBC, points out his abrupt 180 when it comes to Sandy funding versus Harvey funding.
A lot of people are pointing out that you voted against aid for Sandy after that catastrophic storm.
Well, look, there's time for political sniping later. The problem with that particular bill is it became a $50 billion bill that was filled with unrelated pork. 2/3 of that bill had nothing to do with Sandy. And what I said then and still believe now is that it's not right for politicians to exploit a disaster and people are hurting to pay for their own political wish list.
God, he's not even good at it. The political sniping, like, you look terrible. You look terrible and you know that. And some politicians can sort of brush it away, but he doesn't have that capacity. And so it's pointed out there, maybe he was hoping it would simply go away, but it's not going to go away. And we've actually got a cat fight between him and a Republican, Chris Christie. So let's turn here on Fox, Chris Christie pointing out again that hypocrisy.
Senator Cruz's accusation that 2/3 of the Sandy bill was pork is absolutely ridiculous. Washington Post did a fact check on it yesterday that is consistent with what I remember at the time. There was a Senate bill that had some of that, and it all got stripped out because all of us, including the people in New Jersey, objected to it. They were playing politics with it, okay? They were all getting ready to do what they wanted to do for 2016 and make themselves seem like the most conservative person. The fact of the matter is, there's not a liberal conservative way to deal with people who are drowning and dying.
Yeah. So there's a liberal and conservative way to deal with people who want to cross a bridge, though. There's some different ideas about how to do that.
Yes, but in this case, Chris Christie is absolutely right.
Yes.
So the Washington Post gave it 3 out of 4 Pinocchios for Ted Cruz's claim that that bill was loaded up with pork. It's just not true. But the thing that Christie's most right about is that Ted Cruz saw a political opportunity during Hurricane Sandy to paint himself as the most diabolically conservative, which to the rest of the country might seem incredibly unappealing, but for Republican primary voters who he was targeting because he knew he was going to run, and he did in 2016, is good news for them. This draconian ass who, even when people are absolutely suffering and dying and we've got a natural disaster, says, no, I won't give you the money. I won't give you the money under any circumstance. I don't care if you're dying in the middle of a storm. That's the political game that Ted Cruz played. Now when it comes to bite him in the ass in Texas, all of a sudden he's got his hat on and he's pretending to help people.
I'm just worried about the people.
And all of a sudden it's not time for political sniping. Well, how come during Hurricane Sandy it was a perfect time for your political ambitions, and now all of a sudden when it hits your home state, not the right time for politics? And to John's point about Chris Christie's hypocrisy, all the Republicans are hypocrites. Whenever it's an issue that they think helps them politically, let's say terrorism, they go, oh my God, we gotta go get them. We gotta go get the bad guys and the terrorists, and let's make this political and drop bombs. When it's a mass shooting, hey, wait a minute. Don't make this political by talking about guns.
No sniping.
No sniping, literally in that case, right? So and so they go back and forth on this, but on this one, Ted Cruz is 1,000,000% wrong, and he knows it. And this is the hypocrisy that's so sickening.
Yeah, and occasionally with Republicans, as we've pointed out over the years, when something that they've been against, some sort of social issue, actually affects them or their family, sometimes, because it affected their tiny little circle, they will evolve and they'll become like a normal empathic person. But in this, I don't expect that to happen. I mean, Ted Cruz voted against the Sandy funds and now it's a 180, so he wants the Harvey funds, which of course he should. But there will be more storms, we know that. That's what we've signed up for with the way we've organized our economy and our energy system. So when the next set of storms comes, will Ted Cruz support it? Will people force him to? Will the media point out his position on Harvey? Will other politicians? Probably not. I mean, Ted Cruz is getting our focus here, but he was not the only Republican in Texas or across the country that was against those Sandy funds. It's sort of expected that at this point that if it's not their state, they're simply not going to care. But I want to point out some of the other people attacking him. There's been some great covers on the New York Daily News. Let's bring up this first one. It's pretty clear what they think. Drop dead Ted.
Now, that was during the campaign, by the way, when he said that when he attacked quote unquote New York values.
Yes.
And so one of my favorite tweets is from Peter King. I don't know if you've got it.
Oh yeah, we do have it.
Go ahead.
We got one more cover. Let's bring up the second one. How do we get out of the Bronx? Take the FU train, Ted. That's clever. But then we do have Pete King as well saying Ted Cruz and Texas cohorts voted versus New York, New Jersey aid after Sandy, but I'll vote for Harvey aid. New York won't abandon Texas. One bad turn doesn't deserve another.
But my favorite is the second one, where he said, hold on one second. I love the turn of phrase that he used.
While you're looking, I would just like to point out, though, that with the cat fight between Ted Cruz and Chris Christie, and Chris Christie is accurately pointing out that Ted Cruz was being affected by his primary ambitions, there's a non-zero chance that this little cat fight is a very early shot in the next set of Republican primaries. I mean, Ted Cruz certainly wants to run again. Chris Christie doesn't realize how irrelevant he is. And so that has to be playing in the background of both of their minds.
Oh, no question. So then my favorite Pete King tweet was, as lifelong New Yorker with New York values, I will vote for emergency Harvey funding for Ted Cruz's constituents. Above all, true Americans must stand together. So that's a shot that combines Ted Cruz talking about New York values in a negative light during the primary and his vote on Hurricane Sandy. And then Frank Biondo, who is a Republican of New Jersey, joined in as well, and saying the same thing. Hey, listen, we're gonna help the people of Texas, even though Cruz, and by the way, almost the entire Republican Texas state delegation, not the state delegation, but the federal delegation for Texas voted against Sandy funding. All but one of them. They all said, no, if it affects New York or New Jersey, we don't care. We're not going to give money for that. Let them die. Okay.
And they actually voted in favor of a storm for San Francisco.
Now, when it turns around and it's Texas, it's Republican 101. Oh, but that's my people. If it's no good, dirty New Yorkers, what would they know? They have dirty New York values, then I vote no. Oh, sometimes they get hit by terrorism, like on 9/11. Who cares? Sometimes they get hit by superstorms like Sandy. Who cares? I'm not a New Yorker. I'm not going to give them any money in their time of need. Now that same Texas delegation, including Ted Cruz, turns around and goes, oh, golly gee, heaven forfend people playing politics. I want money, give me the money. And I'll tell you this, you think Ted Cruz is just doing this for the people of Texas? No, he'll fight for that so that he gets more votes. I understand that. But I guarantee you, I laid out for you right now, well ahead of time. When it comes to ask for money, he's gonna ask money for the oil companies. He's gonna ask money for all of his donors and his real constituency in Texas. All this stuff about, oh golly gee, I'm down in Texas, didn't have time for politics. It's like, oh donors, don't worry, I got your back. Hey, what's great about my predictions is that I tell you ahead of time. So if I'm wrong and Ted Cruz never asked for money for his big business donors down in Texas, then you'll get to say, hey Cenk, look at that. What a crazy conspiracy theory you had, that the millions of dollars that they gave Ted Cruz would actually affect him. But you'll see, he will in fact ask for that money, and that's part of what this is about. TYTnetwork.com/Harvey, not a dollar, not a cent to any of the oil companies who caused this mess in the first place.
But finally, while we're focusing on Ted Cruz because we want to check the hypocrisy of politicians, obviously, I mean, the money getting to the people suffering is what's important, and going forward, I don't expect that the politicians will learn, and they will continue to support funds for their state and not for others. But what we need to do is take it out of the hands of individual politicians having to make these individual decisions on the merit of victims on various storms. We have contingency funds for natural disasters like this. We know that thanks to climate change, they're not large enough. And so we need to get in ahead of the next set of superstorms before they hit, and before we have to make the decision when people are currently drowning and allocate that money. But more importantly, we need to allocate more money to prepare for these storms. We should not simply be reacting to disasters. We should be getting in front of it in terms of things like levees and all of that, emergency services to be in place for when storms hit. But more importantly, by taking away subsidies for fossil fuels, for investing heavily into alternative forms of energy to try to make sure that in the future, while we can't avoid some of the effects of climate change because of the terrible decisions we've made in the past, we can hopefully avoid making worse decisions in the future and further making future storms more intense by moving in a direction that takes away some of the future growth of climate change.
All right, we got to take a break, guys. So when we come back, don't worry, Republicans have a plan for economic uplift. It involves $7 trillion in tax cuts for their donors. Golly gee, what a coincidence. Once again, The donors get all the benefits.
Weird. Whether the economy's doing well or not.
Yeah.
Interesting how that works
What
out.
a lucky break for those guys. All right. When unlike the rest of the idiots on TV, we'll cover it accurately for you when we return. I went to Kentucky Fried Chicken when I first got my license, like 17 years old or 17, 18, whatever it was. And I'm driving, I think, my dad's Oldsmobile. And I parked it in a place where there was 2 cars next to me, really tight spot, and a car behind me. I don't even know how I got in there because I'm a terrible driver. Back then I was an even worse driver. And on the roads I'm okay, but in parking spots, I have terrible spatial reasoning and I'm a mess. And on my way out, I hit all 3 cars at once. I broke all records, okay? So I went, as I'm backing out, I went boom, oh shit. And this side hit that car, this side hit this car, and the back hit the 3rd car, okay? And I got stuck. I didn't know how to get out. Like I went, okay, this, and then I'm like, no, and then, right? And then finally I had to stop, go inside the KFC and go, I'm sorry, I hit a bunch of your cars. They're like, what do you mean a bunch of your cars? I'm like, I don't know.
Wow, there's a B?
Yeah, I'm like, I hit 3 cars. I don't know, so you guys gotta come help me, okay? Yeah. Okay, so 1, my bad, really sorry about that. Yeah. Okay, number 2, can someone take my car out? Because I don't wanna keep hitting your cars and I'm incapable of taking it out of this spot.
Hey, Cenk, what's up?
Aaron, I forgot my email password. What is it?
PASSWORD.
I saw a picture of John. I was like, look at this fucking badass Viking he met on his trip. And I was like, oh wait, that's John.
Yeah.
Because his beard is so gross. I swear to God, I didn't recognize him. I thought it was like a dude from up there, like a Viking looking dude from up there.
Yeah.
And I was like, hey, we've got our own Viking. Look at Johnny Pie. Johnny Pie, we miss you, big guy. And he was at Svalbard. We were talking about how he was gonna go get the grains if he's the last person on Earth, and he's got to, or among the last people on that ship, and repopulate the Earth after North Korea. At least he's got the grains. He knows where it is. He can find it. Don't worry, humanity will be saved. Yet again, by a white male, John Idaho. All right, back on the Young Turks, Cenk and John with you. Isa Aydin writes in on YouTube Super Chat, and we encourage you to use that because it elevates your comments and it helps the show. You are great, Young Turks. Why, thank you. We appreciate it.
You're great.
Blue writes in on Twitter, hashtag TYT Live. John is the TYT version of Tarmond, which is awesome. Oh, that's great. How did you have that ready?
Why did you have a picture of wait, hold
on. That's pretty good. That's pretty close, man. Just bring in Brianna Tarth here.
I need more hair. I need more hair. And a lot more beard to here.
Okay.
It's probably not going to happen, by the way.
Okay.
How fast did they go to a picture of Tormund? Did they just like sitting on the button?
That was amazing. Nice job, Jesus.
That was crazy.
Yeah, you got a new nickname now, Johnny Wildling. So Woke Poppy writes in.
Anyway,
to put in better perspective, 51 inches is 4 feet. 4 feet of water. I don't think any city in the U.S. can handle that much water. That's a great point.
In Houston, there's major roads that have to like dip down, like they've been dug out to get under other roads and bridges. And in some places, they're flooded to 23 feet.
Oh, it's insane.
That's absurd.
Tanya Pavlova writes in, Cenk, the worst part is that as long as they deny climate change, they won't build buildings with it in mind. In fact, Trump just canceled that preparedness that the Obama administration wanted to do with that in mind. So we're in way worse shape. And finally, Taylor writes in, it's crazy how much I've missed John Iadarola. I don't want him to go back to the Arctic and leave us again. But we need him on that wall.
I gotta go.
So, look.
I'll be gone for weeks again.
Yeah, see, he's even taken on the black.
I've taken on the dark blue.
All right, let's keep it going, Johnny Wilding.
Okay. Trump is now turning to his next big legislative goal, that is a fundamental rewriting of the entire US tax code with a couple of goals in mind. One is to give a massive historic tax cut to the richest individuals and biggest corporations the world has ever seen, because they've been hurting recently, and while also bankrupting the US government. So that'll be very nice for him if he can accomplish it. We're gonna break down all the details as we have for what feels like 2 years now, what his goals in terms of taxes are, but we wanna show you a little bit of his announcement today where he talked about his strategy going forward. Here is Donald Trump.
Must dramatically simplify the tax code, eliminate special interest loopholes. And I'm speaking against myself when I do this, I have to tell you. And I might be speaking against Mr. Cook, and we're both okay with it. Is that right? It's crazy. We're speaking, maybe we shouldn't be doing this, you know? But we're doing the right thing.
That's an absolute lie. One of the taxes that they're going to cut through is called a pass-through tax. And that is how Donald Trump has almost all of his money funneled to him. So that way he pays lower taxes on it. And he's going to cut that tax. He's an absolute 100% liar. So this tax cut is for the enormously rich. It's for multinational corporations. And yes, it's definitely for Donald Trump. So he'll brag about, oh, I'm not taking my salary as president, which is $400,000. The amount of taxes that he'll save, if he's right about his wealth, which is of course not true. He claims he has $10 billion. It's not remotely true. But if he's right about it, he could save up to $1 billion in taxes.
Yeah.
So another gargantuan Trump lie.
Yeah, let alone killing the estate tax, which is one of their goals. That certainly could save his kids $1 billion or more. Yeah, like he lies. We all know he lies. He's been lying for years. We've heard thousands and thousands of lies, and we point out why they're lies. We show the facts, and it doesn't convince anyone. And so I get that. But if you believe that he would pass a bill that would harm himself financially, you are too stupid to be left alone with a TV. I don't think it's safe for you to be watching TV by yourself. How could you possibly believe that? Maybe one component of the bill will hurt him by $15, and then he'll cut his corporate taxes to basically a third of what they are now, as we're gonna lay out, saving himself millions of dollars. The people who laughed in the crowd are not laughing at his joke. They're laughing at the stupid people who will believe his lies. And so I hope that nobody watching this does. But we got more Trump for you. Before we go to more of his loopholes and the plan and all that, they've been previewing that they're turning now to taxes. So in an interview with the Financial Times last week, the economic advisor, Cohn, said that the White House and GOP leaders have agreed on a, quote, good skeleton for a tax overhaul, and said that the House Tax Writing Committee would be drafting legislation while the White House tries to sell its plan. Which is interesting because this reminds me a lot of the push for repealing Obamacare and trying to replace it, where he gives these like sort of vague ideas of what he wants, and then he puts it on the White House, on the House. And that's interesting because theoretically they might share a lot of goals, but if you're in the House, it might be concerning for you based on what happened with the healthcare debacle, because of course, he insulted the plan, saying it was without heart and it was mean, and throwing under the bus the very people who were trying to pass a bill that did what he wanted. And so in a breakdown in Politico, talking with some of the people who are gonna be doing this drafting of the bill, people said that there are questions over whether the White House will embrace the legislation that eventually comes out of the House effort or distance itself as critics and special interests start getting louder. And if you were alive during the healthcare plan battle, why wouldn't you believe that he would do that? And the idea is that he's going to be standing back and trying to sell the plan, using the bully pulpit and going around the country. But we saw with the healthcare, like he largely forgot what they were even talking about during that time, and he left them out to be skewered.
Yeah, so look, guys, this is a false debate. There's this whole drama about will this pass or will this not pass? And I remember even before our public debate, Ben Shapiro said, and he said it during the debate as well, oh, no, it definitely won't pass because there's too much opposition and there's just no way to blah, blah, blah.
The tax plan won't?
The tax plan, you're nuts.
Yeah.
It will definitely pass. So it'll pass with Trump or without Trump. The only person who could blow this tax cut is Trump with his grotesque incompetence. But even if he were to, after he leaves, Pence will pass it. So the question isn't that. The question is, are they going to have to settle for a multi-trillion-dollar tax cut and get some corporate Democrats to back them? And will they think that that's a better strategy? Hey, let's not get too greedy. Let's take just a couple of $1 trillion from the American people and do wealth redistribution to the top. That way we'll get a couple of our lackeys in the Democratic Party to go along with us and it'll definitely go through. Or do we go for the gold here and go for like the $7 trillion tax cut?
Yeah.
And that might be a little bit harder. That's the only question, not whether these donors are gonna get paid off. Because that's the whole point of buying this Congress and buying Trump. This is the swamp monster and it shall have its way.
Yeah, and look, this is, before the election, this is one of the main 4 reasons that under no circumstances could Trump or any Republican get in the White House is this tax reform, because it is the gift that keeps on giving. It is the foundation that underlies all of their other goals. If you can take $8 trillion away from the federal government, then you are requiring cuts to government programs of a sort that we've never even imagined before. And they are not going to be coming from conservative priorities. They are going to decimate every progressive achievement over the past half century, and they will have to have anything close to a balanced budget going forward if they're able to pass this. And I agree, it will be interesting to see how greedy they get, because they have been salivating over these massive tax cuts basically since Bush, since they got other massive tax cuts. And there's a lot that they want. They want to get rid of the estate tax. They want to cut business taxes down to almost nothing. They want to cut the top tax bracket down significantly. And they could go for all of that and probably still get 1 or 2 Democrats to go along with it. Or they could simply destroy the federal government, get trillions, and there would probably be a significant amount of bipartisanship in that, which is unfortunate.
Okay, by the way, this is not tax reform, these are tax cuts. If it was reform, it would be revenue neutral. It is not going to be anywhere near revenue neutral. In fact, Paul Ryan gave up and said a couple of weeks ago, yes, fine, it will not be revenue neutral. He was pretending all the way to the end that it was gonna be that way, and then all his donors pulled him aside and said, no, on this one issue, we're definitely with Trump. Make it as severe a tax cut as you could possibly make. And it doesn't just destroy progressive priorities. Social Security and Medicare are 77% and 84% approval. Social Security at 84%, they're gonna cut it. Because you can't.
I count those as progressive priorities that the American public doesn't realize how progressive they're on.
Yes, and they love those. And will you get relief from natural disasters like Hurricane Harvey? Not if you don't. The federal government has no money. So
there will not be a single food stamp in the country after this.
Yeah. And beyond that, it is wealth redistribution. Now corporations will pay even less. They used to pay 35% of all taxes back in the 1950s. Now they're down to 11%. This will bring them down to maybe 5%. Who pays the tax? You guys do. The middle class pay it through a payroll tax, which keeps getting larger and larger. When they say tax cuts, they don't mean for you. Most of the time it winds up being tax increases for you guys because of how the tax pie gets split up. When corporations pay less, you pay more. So this is a way of doing wealth redistribution for the richest people in the country, and that winter is definitely coming.
Yeah, we're not gonna go through all the numbers again, but if you think that like this tax plan is gonna benefit the top 10%, say, you're actually wrong, because it basically almost every single dollar of the $8 trillion that he laid out back in April when he gave his sort of broad strokes idea of what he wanted to pass goes to the top 5%. And just really, this is amazing to me. If we could cut to graphic 15, the overall plan would give the average family earning under $25,000 per year a $40 tax cut, or a 0.3% boost in after-tax income, which is nice. Maybe you can take your spouse to see the next Deadpool or something, and then that's it for the year for you on taxes. Whereas the top 0.1% earning above $3 million a year would get almost $1 million in tax cuts, or a 13.3% boost in after-tax income. They could finance a nice indie movie of their own.
And by the way, later they will increase the payroll tax, local taxes, sales taxes, and
they'll
fines.
have to.
And fines, which all will hit the middle class. That $40 is going to be gone like that. In reality, your taxes will go way up because of these. But the top 1% still get to keep their $1 million a year, let alone what the corporations keep. This is the one thing that Nancy Pelosi is right about. She says tax plan is not reform. This is a tax cut for billionaires. So credit where credit is due. At least even she figured it out, and half of her donors are billionaires.
Yeah. I more than wish I said what we could say, but we should probably cut to our second break.
Okay, we got to take a break. When we come back, it turns out that Trump is more depressed than he's ever been, and he feels super sad about it. Baby, we will explain.
The Gaslamp Killer, Piece to Absent presents 2016 shit. I like drums. I like big drums. Heavy, funky, deep drums. I'm not classically trained. I just started out as a record collector. I have synthesizers. I have all these modular synths and fun DJ tools that I use to make psychedelic sounds. It's not just the music. People want to leave their bodies in order to connect with the spirit world. And when you're making music, it's a similar kind of thing. You want to escape your day-to-day to leaving this shit behind and finding more of a deeper place to create from. That is the essence of Gaslamp Killer music.
One, two, three, four.
There's always these weird cream cheese options. I can never just find the plain.
What about salmon?
Do I look like a grizzly bear?
Here, try this veggie.
Where's the plain? Where is it?
You're more of a grape drink kind of guy, right? Or try this mouthwash.
Where's the plain?
Do you like sexual healing?
Where is the plane? Where's the plane? Where's the plane? Where is it? Where's the plane?
Dude. Anna Rasparian.
No, I want the plane. Supervisor! Aren't you the supervisor? Isn't that the whole point of being supervisor? Why do you get to decide my cream cheese options? At what point did you decide there'd be no plain cream cheese? I don't understand.
Take it easy, man.
No, this is true just like with politics and anything else. If we don't stand up for ourselves, they're just gonna fuck us even harder. You're not gonna believe this. They kicked me out of the kitchen.
Hey, Cenk, what's up?
Aaron, I want to do a YouTube live clip, but not live. Go. I have decided that I'm going to get ripped. Okay.
What?
Okay.
Like, physically?
Yeah. Okay. What, you don't believe me?
I 100% don't believe you.
I will get so ripped, here's my prediction, that someone at TYT will say, Cenk, you've got to stop working out.
We're tired of you winning.
So you don't believe me?
Cenk, you don't have time to like do your daily duties for the main show.
Duties. You don't even have time for your daily duties. Because what you guys don't know is how great my muscles already are.
It's absolutely possible, but you can't have Leah run to the food truck to get you like 2 different types of grilled cheeses with like tater tots for lunch. Like you can't have that anymore.
Let's see what happens.
You also have to go to the gym regularly.
Let's see what happens. All I'm saying is, let's see what happens. Have I ever been wrong about a prediction? Almost ever. All right, back on the Young Turks, Cenk and John. Members of the day are Stephen Coleman and Nick Linders. So if you become a member, we'll read out your name from time to time as well. And of course, get the post games. Today you'll get old school. We got a great old school coming up for you tonight. So tytnetwork.com/join. Don't you see I'm loco wrote in and said, but tax cuts mean higher wages. That is why the minimum wage is now $21 an hour. Wait.
How long have I been gone? What year is it?
So, guys, we're going to do a giant expose about this scam where they pretend the tax cuts create more jobs. Our reporters are working on that, and we'll have that for you guys soon.
I actually ran an experiment on this, where it was a long experiment too. I got George W. Bush elected as president, and we passed through. It was difficult, but we passed through tax cuts to generate growth and higher wages, and it didn't work.
Huh,
it didn't
really?
work. Yeah.
Don't tell me that at the very end of his administration, he actually lost 8 million jobs.
Something like that, yeah.
Huh.
Yeah, I had already written the conclusion of my paper, and I wasn't going to rewrite it at that point.
Well, that makes sense.
Yeah, but more experiments to come. Anyway, okay, let's turn to Trump. In recent weeks, Donald Trump has lost some of his close buddies. He lost prominent white supremacist Steve Bannon, and that's his chief strategist. And he lost Sebastian Gorka, his deputy assistant, who also has some troubling ties to white supremacy around the world. And what's interesting is that in the wake of this, more leaks are coming out of the White House showing that one of the reasons the White House is emptier and emptier with every passing week is actually Trump's moodiness. His mood swings have gotten really bad, apparently worse than ever. Interviews with 6 White House staffers and people close to the president attribute Trump's shrinking West Wing to 3 factors. You've got John Kelly changing up how they hire people. You've got the chilling factor of 5 open-ended Russia investigations hanging over the White House, and people don't want to sign on to a ship where they're likely to end up in jail. And the president's own dark mood, which has left him increasingly isolated and in the mood to hunker down, not higher up. Why is he in such a bad mood? Well, because he's awful at his job and he knows that that's part of it. But another reason is recent public criticisms from people like Rex Tillerson and Gary Cohn, who have criticized him for a number of things, like his whether he speaks for American values and also his position on white supremacy itself. The source close to the president described his mindset in recent weeks as the worst it's ever been, and said particularly that those criticisms from his some of his top aides there cut him to the quick. He's a sensitive soul.
I have 2 things to say about this. The first is sad. The second is baby.
I thought you might say that. Yeah.
Okay.
You want a quote where you're gonna feel bad for Donald Trump?
Good luck.
The source in the White House says, quote, he feels like this is not what he signed up for and his accomplishments are being underplayed. He just looks around and says, when is this going to get better? Occasionally Melania does that historically too. What I love is he feels his accomplishments, and then she gets out of the bed. He feels his accomplishments are being underplayed. This is the guy who gets a folder of positive news delivered to him twice a day, and he still feels his accomplishments are being underplayed. No one has had their ego stroked this much in the history of the planet. It's not enough for him.
To be fair, I think the good folder guy quit.
One of the good folder guys quit. There were 2. So maybe he doesn't get the afternoon folder. Maybe he only gets the morning pick-me-up of pictures of him looking strong on TV.
After perpetual vomiting, the good folder, one of the good folder guys, like, I can't do this anymore. Okay, I gotta go.
Yeah, you can only cut yourself for so many weeks, I guess.
Yeah.
That poor sap. Anyway.
So that last quote I love because I want to analyze it. He says he feels like this is not what he signed up for. You signed up to be president, where I don't know if you know this, there's a lot of critics of the president. I remember when President Obama was in charge, for example, and you're a big loudmouth critic, tweeting away about every single thing he did and didn't do. So I didn't sign up for this.
Yeah.
What a snowflake. What a sad, sad child.
Yeah.
I mean, Truman said the buck stops here. Trump said, I didn't sign up for this. Second part of the quote is, his accomplishments are being underplayed. There's a very little question. What accomplishments? He hasn't gotten any major legislation passed. None. No major legislation to speak of at all. Healthcare didn't happen, nothing has happened.
Some executive orders, I guess.
Okay, but that's not an accomplishment. If I'm president, I could sign 1,000 executive orders. There's nothing stopping you. That's not an accomplishment. That's like your opinion, man, right? And even if, look, the executive orders have some force of law, you can't say you got it done. All you have to do is this to get it done, right?
He signed the executive order that someone else wrote and gave to him.
That's right. And he looks around and says, when is it gonna get better? And that's the one I have the most definitive news on. Never. So this is the same thing I said about Bush in his second term around 2006. I even wrote an article about it. You know how much I love my predictions. At the time, all the pundits on TV were talking about a quote unquote narrative of a comeback. And I wrote a piece saying he is not capable of a comeback. His poll numbers will not bounce back up. They will continue to spiral downwards because Bush did not have the capacity, the intellectual capacity or any other capacity to mount a comeback because he was not up for the job. Trump
has less capacity.
Way worse. I mean, I could not have imagined of a president more incompetent than George W. Bush, and it turns out I lacked enough imagination because Trump is significantly worse. So when is it gonna get better? Never. No, you will continue to spiral down. You'll get into the 20s, and you might even get into the teens unless you resign first. You are an incompetent buffoon of the highest order. I'm sorry if I hurt your feelings. Did you not sign up for this?
Yeah.
So I'm going to end on the same 2 words. Sad baby.
Okay, we go with transition to the last story? Okay. Another day, another routine traffic stop that very nearly ended in the death of an unarmed civilian. This time it's in Washington State, where we have a motorcyclist who thankfully had a helmet cam on during the altercation that you're about to see. And with it, he catches the insane behavior of an unnamed detective. So the video is about to start. You're gonna see he comes to a stop and then there's an altercation.
Oh shit! What are you doing to me?
What do you mean? What am I doing?
What are you?
Fucking driver.
Hi, why do you have a gun on me? I'm unarmed.
You off this bike.
I'm an unarmed. I will pull over.
Care.
I'm unarmed.
Take your ID right now.
I'm going to
take your ID out. You move to this bike. I'm going to dump you.
I'm going to put my bike down. I'm going to put it. I'm going to turn it off, and I'm going to get off. Okay? Is that all right? Can I take my helmet off?
Get your fucking ID out.
I can't hear you very well, sir.
Get your ID out, please.
I can't hear you very well. Can I turn my vehicle off?
Then I'll take it for
That's my wallet.
Yep.
I'm not armed.
ID, right? That's what I'm more worried about.
I'm sorry, you have a gun drawn on me, so I'm a little panicked.
The police. That's right. When you're driving, you're going to place people at risk at 100 miles an hour plus on the goddamn roadway.
May I please turn my vehicle off and take my helmet off?
Absolutely.
Thanks. I'm gonna.
Yeah, you're good. I got your ID. I'm good now. That's what I wanted. You understand? I'm with the King County Sheriff's Office. Okay. You understand that?
Forgive me, like I said, I get nervous when there's a gun on me. Like I'm not,
and you know what?
I don't want to be crazy or anything. Like I want to get off.
Okay, first of all, wow, you don't even know that guy's a cop. Some guy walks up to you with a gun
and reaches in and takes your wallet. That looked like he was robbing someone.
Yeah,
like he was just a robber.
Look, if you're a cop, it doesn't mean you're above the law. It means you enforce the law.
You should be more conscious of the law.
Yeah, that's not that complicated a formula. So you don't get to pull your gun on people because you thought they were going too fast. And there's other people saying that no, he didn't go anywhere near 100 miles per hour on the bike. But it doesn't matter if he did. That's not how you approach someone, and you don't approach them with a weapon drawn. Because once you draw the weapon, as we saw in the Philando Castile case, and in the yoga instructor case, also in the state of Minnesota, once you pull out the weapon, God knows anything could happen. With Philando Castile, the cop told him not to reach down or reach up. So either way, he was going to get shot. And he told him to get his ID. So here we have a situation where the guy says, go get your ID. And the guy says, can I take my helmet off? No, I can't hear you. I mean, you have confusion with a gun drawn.
Yeah.
You reach in any way, shape, or form, high, low, the wrong way, and you're going to die.
Yeah.
That's not, and when that guy did not appear, did he look armed to you? I mean, it's not to say that he couldn't be armed. It's that there's no reason to suspect that he was armed, and you don't pull a weapon on every single person that you pull over.
Yeah.
Especially if you're plain clothes, but even if you weren't.
Yeah, we have people who ride. I used to ride for years. We have people who ride here. Most people riding motorcycles don't have guns on them. That's just the way it is. Most people in cars don't either, but cops will say that they can't see into the car, it's dark. On a motorcycle, everything is bare. You can see everything. They're not reaching down under the seat or anything like that. He walks up with his gun like hidden by his body, like he's trying to murder someone and not get caught doing it. And just put yourself in the mindset, the feelings of that guy on that motorcycle. Instantly, he does everything that you're supposed to do. He says, I am unarmed, I am unarmed. He asks, can I turn off the bike? He tells him, I can't hear you. He makes clear that there's communication problems. He can't reach into his pocket because he's wearing fucking motorcycle gloves. You can't do that. Look at his hands. You know that he can't reach in there. He can't hear you over the engine and the car is next to him. He's got a helmet on. Let him take it off. You can watch him with your goddamn gun drawn during that. He walks up, no provocation, with the gun pointed at him, doesn't take it off. He instantly, by the way, one of the first things he says is, give me your ID or I'm knocking you off the bike. He later says, I'm gonna dump you. So instantly, there's not just the threat to his life, but there's, I will destroy your property. I will do thousands of dollars worth of damage to your vehicle if you don't do the impossible thing I'm asking you to do instantaneously.
I thought I'm gonna dump you was far more threatening. Luckily, I mean, it's just the beginning, so we'll see. I have to see how the office reacts overall. But the King County Sheriff John Urquhart said on Facebook after seeing the video of the detective that he was, quote, deeply disturbed with the conduct and tactics that were recorded before announcing that the detective had been placed on administrative leave. So let's let the sheriff's department here handle it first, and we'll see how it goes. Because look, bad behavior is one thing. Cover-ups for bad behavior by the overall organization is much worse, and that has not happened here yet.
Yeah.
Okay.
Not yet.
So we'll be on the lookout for it. We'll follow the case, but this is partly what happens when you tell cops you can do anything and there'll never be any consequences.
And every person you come across might shoot you at any second.
That's
so
right.
You better have your gun out.
That's right. So hopefully there are some consequences here, so it sends the opposite message. Remember, you're supposed to protect the community, not draw your weapons on them.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, we're out of time. Thank you, Johnny Pie. Good to have you back. I mean, Johnny Wildling. Tormund Iderola will be back later, and Anna's joining us next. They have uncovered some writings from some of the people who attended the Charlottesville March where they talked about running over protesters. So that is chilling, and also the defense secretary saying Trump's orders, maybe, maybe not. So that's fascinating too. We'll have that for you when we return.
He's a war hero. 5.5 years. He's a war hero because he was captured. I like people that weren't captured, okay?
He said I had small hands. They're not small, are they? I never heard that one before.
Today is truly a historic day with the Supreme Court decision that makes same-sex marriage legal nationwide.
So this is one of those days in American history. It doesn't come along that often, where we have expanded the circle of liberty.
Look, all we try to do on this show, okay, is to give you perspectives, right? So you can get a better understanding.
We need to change our mentality and understand why these people are trying to leave their own countries and everything that they've known, everything that they've built.
Yeah.
It's not to come here and harm you.
Anytime you force someone like they did in Arizona to carry their paperwork, it's to remind them every day that they do not belong in your society.
Now that is the sound of fascism beginning here in America.
Doesn't that scare you? Don't you see history repeating itself? That xenophobia and faux populism to get people worked up to attack outsiders.
That is violent rhetoric, and your violent rhetoric translates to violent actions. If you don't get that, well, you're either in denial or you know it's true and you just don't want to admit it.
What's the message we're sending to the rest of the world? I mean, give us your poor, you're tired, and we will greatly mistreat them under horrible conditions where some of them will die. That's not what the Statue of Liberty says.
If you asked me to come up with something insulting to Latinos, I couldn't have done anything like this. I wouldn't have thought to insult their grandkids.
Yeah.
2/3 of the people shot when they're unarmed were blacks and Latinos. That means they were wrong. They're like, who cares? Shoot them, shoot them, shoot them, shoot them.
Look, my dad was born in Syria. My dad could have stayed in Syria and he could have been a victim of all this, right? And the thought of the United States saying no to Syrian victims, I don't know, it makes me incredibly emotional and incredibly angry because I think it goes against what this country's about.
The fighters, the warriors, the ones who go the extra mile, in this case literally, to provide for their family and to look for that American dream. And they shouldn't be forced to live in an American nightmare.
Hey, Cenk, what's up?
Aaron, my VCR keeps flashing 12, but it's not even midnight. Go.
All right, back on the Young Turks, Cenk and Anna with you. A couple of good tweets here. Zeiss Cube, which is something I already enjoy, says how he's holding the gun proves he knows what he's doing is wrong. That close to the chest means he's hiding it from the others. That is absolutely true about the video we just showed you at the end of the last segment about not undercover cop, but plainclothes officer who approached the motorcyclist. And then also on that issue, Jeremy Colo writes in, that guy needed a gun to get an ID. Did he forget that his badge is in the other pocket? Your gun is not your source of authority. That's a great point. You pull the gun if you're a gangster and you can't get respect in another way. And if they don't respect you, you pull the gun to say, okay, I'll kill you if you don't respect me. The badge is supposed to give you the authority, and that's the authority vested by the rest of us. So that was just brutally wrong. All right, let's go forward. And Anna's got a great hour for you guys.
Yes, I do. All right, let's get started with some good news. U.S. Defense Secretary Jim Mattis has stated that those who are openly serving as transgender in the military can continue serving pending a study to see what the impact would be to ban them. Now, there will be a panel involved, and according to what Mattis has to say, once that panel reports its recommendations and following my consultation with the Secretary of Homeland Security, I will provide my advice to the president concerning implementation of his policy direction. In the interim, current policy with respect to currently serving members will remain in place. So keep in mind, Donald Trump tweeted randomly out of nowhere that he intended on banning transgender individuals from serving in the military. There were no details. It wasn't a well thought out plan. The Defense Department was caught off guard by those tweets. Later on, though, Trump signed on Friday a memo reinstating a ban on transgender people serving in the military, which was lifted under President Barack Obama. He left Mr. Mattis to decide whether those already in the armed forces would be allowed to continue to serve. And so it seems like Mattis is kind of standing up for our military members who are transgender. We'll see how it plays out in the future, but I did not expect, well, I guess I should expect him to be the voice of reason here.
Yeah, well, not a lot of voice of reason in the Trump administration, but okay, first let me clarify, because I feel like a lot of the press is reporting this as Mattis is disagreeing with Trump, and there is a chance that he will. And to Anna's point, when Trump first tweeted about this, the Joint Chiefs of Staff and Mattis were like, we were not consulted, so and no order has been given, so we're not going to give it. So we're not going to actually implement that. So that clearly seems like they're saying we disagree. That is where it comes from. And I get the sense, as Anna does, that they do disagree. Now, having said that, they're not in their acts are not showing that. What they're saying is there's three different layers to this. Trump tweet means absolutely nothing. In this case, like you could actually do a pardon through a tweet, which is unbelievable. Wow. You're not supposed to. You're supposed to go through a procedure which Trump did not follow in Arpaio's case. But for things that apply to the military, you must go through a process. You can't just tweet it. And so they're like, but we never heard of this, and I don't know how to react to this tweet. It's not part of the regular process. So the second step is Trump actually giving an order, which he did Friday, which is what Anna just pointed out. Okay, now we're actually have something in motion. Then the second step is Mattis has to figure out, as a defense secretary, how to apply it. Now, if Mattis was aligned with Trump, he might have come out and said, oh, we're definitely going to get rid of those folks. We just have to figure out how, and we'll get back to you on the strategy. Instead, he's coming out saying, no, we're not going to disrupt the forces, which by the way is the logical thing to do. And we're going to let those folks serve for now. Then we'll come up with the particulars of the policy and implement it.
Exactly, and keep in mind, there are between 4,000 to 10,000 members of our military who identify as transgender. And so just banning them and getting rid of them would be a really dumb idea, especially considering the fact that you'd have to replace those people with individuals that are not banned or deemed banned by Trump. And so you'd have to retrain those people. That takes a considerable amount of resources. This is all just a dumb idea that obviously panders to Trump's base, which was growing increasingly frustrated with the fact that there were no legislative wins. Healthcare had just failed. The repeal and replace of the Affordable Care Act had just failed. And so Trump's like, I don't know, well, how can I pander to my base? Let's ban the transgender people from our military.
Yeah, and unfortunately for his base, this will probably work. So first of all, think about how badly they've treated these people who offered to sacrifice their lives for our country. And so Obama said, it's okay, you can serve in the military. So a lot of people who were transgendered came out and they said, okay, I'm transgender. And then Trump comes in and goes, just kidding. Now that you outed yourself, we're gonna throw you out of the military. So Mattis again is doing the right thing by saying, wait, let's figure this thing out. And second of all, to Anna's point, it costs, according to one study, at least $100 million to kick them out and to recruit new people, train them, etc. So it costs us almost 10 times as much. Trump claimed it was gonna save us money. Now, is his base going to hear any of those finer points? No, all they're gonna hear is Trump against transgender people, me against transgender people, me think this is weird, me used to normal people, they think, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, yep.
So they're not gonna hear that the defense secretary and the joint chiefs are potentially against it. They're not gonna hear that it's gonna cost more money. They're just gonna hear hate and go, me like the sound of that. Right. So for his base, it'll probably work no matter how foolish it is and how unsupported it is by the rest of the government.
Exactly. All right, moving on to some more foolish people. Lawmakers and former lawmakers continue to weigh in on the issue of Confederate statues and whether or not they should be removed from public lands and replaced in memorials where they have the proper context. Well, one of those former lawmakers weighing in on this debate is Georgia State Representative LaDawn Jones. She's no longer a state representative. However, she recently commented on a Facebook post that was written by Georgia State Representative Jason Spencer. Now, Jason Spencer seems to be very much in favor of the Confederate statues, and LaDawn Jones kind of called him out and criticized him for it. And his response was, it appears violent, and I wanted to share it with you. He essentially said that she won't be met with torches, but something a lot more definitive if she continues to call for the removal of statues in South Georgia. He continues to write, people in South Georgia are people of action, not drama, and suggested some who don't understand that will, quote, go missing in the Okefenokee.
Okay. So I think there's a case to be made that Jason Spencer should be arrested. So, you know, right wingers think that freedom of speech means I can say whatever I want. That's not what it means. You can't yell fire in a crowded theater. There are some limitations. And one thing you cannot do is incite violence. So you're allowed any political speech you want, and I love that about this country. And that's kind of what we do here. That's the heart and soul of our job. So I love the First Amendment, I defend it, but you can't say to people, I will murder you. That is a crime, that is not speech, or that is not permitted speech. So now in this case, I grant you that it's tougher because the state rep here did not say, I am going to kill you. He said, other people will kill you.
Right.
But it seems like he's encouraging people to take that action.
Right, which could be perceived as inciting violence, which is not protected by the First Amendment. You know, it's an interesting take that you have regarding prosecuting him. That's not going to happen, and it seems as though they had an interesting relationship back when State Representative Jones was a representative. She's no longer one. She says, yeah, you know, we had a friendship, and it was heated at times because we disagree on things, but we just have that kind of relationship. But I do want to give you some more details into what he said. First of all, the part about they're not about drama, they take action, right? That seems like you are encouraging them, like you're celebrating the idea of people going after a former lawmaker in a violent way and in a definitive way. Anyway, so Jones responded back with, enjoy, but no, winter is coming, which is a Game of Thrones reference for those of you who don't watch. You know it too, otherwise you wouldn't have found a need to even make this post or those hollow threats of not coming to South Georgia. So I think she makes a lot of sense there because I think a lot of people, who identify with some of the neo-Nazis in the country are afraid that they're going to be the minority. You hear it over and over again. We're going to be the minority. We're going to be the minority, as if that's like the worst thing that could possibly happen to them. And there's
that's because they know how they treated minorities when they were in charge, and they think probably minorities will be as vicious as we were to them. So it's an act of projection.
Yeah.
Now, I love LaDawn Blackett-Jones. She's one of my new heroes. I want to because of some of the quotes that she shot back with that I'll tell you in a second. But in terms of Jason Spencer, look, are we gonna let this keep going where you say, now, I'm not gonna kill you, I'm not gonna make you disappear, but maybe my fans will, maybe people who support me will. Now, if you flip it, my guess is the right wing would not be as happy. If, for example, the Black Panther Party or whatever boogeyman that the right wing has in their head said, oh, Bill O'Reilly better not come to Manhattan, otherwise he'll go missing. Or just take all of his quotes.
Are you kidding me? We saw what happened with Kathy Griffin, which, by the way, we also criticized here on the show. She took a photo with what appeared to be a decapitated head that looked like Donald Trump, and their heads exploded, right?
And everybody knew it was a mannequin. It's not like anybody thought, oh, Kathy Griffin beheaded Donald Trump. Right? And they lost it, and I think rightfully so. But when you have an actual threat of violence, of murdering someone, they're like, oh, no big deal, no big deal. Right. Mannequins, super dangerous and scary. Real human beings and threats to them, no big deal. So if some Muslim American group said, Sean Hannity, you better not come to this part of America, otherwise we won't do drama, we'll take real action and make you disappear. There is no way the FBI doesn't investigate that. No way, and you know it. But when right-wingers do it, they have special privileges. And then when you point out white privilege, they go, oh, I am so hurt. Well, this is what we're talking about. It doesn't mean that you're rich. It doesn't mean that you live in a mansion. It means that you can threaten to kill people and get away with it.
You know what?
That minorities wouldn't be able to do, which neither side should be able to do.
It also means that you can literally fire a gun at a crowd of individuals and not get charged with attempted murder. Instead, you get charged with firing a gun within 1,000 feet of a school, right? Which is what happened during that hate rally in Charlottesville. The ACLU released a video of a guy who literally just opened fire at a crowd. Luckily, no one was struck, he missed. But that's what we talk about when we discuss white privilege.
Okay, now let's go to LaDawn Jones, because Anna read you the part where she says you don't need to even make this post or those hollow threats of not coming to South Georgia. The last line of that post was, by the way, I'm in South Georgia right now. Okay, I love her attitude. She said, we will not let you hide hate behind heritage, which is a great way of putting it. She said, move your idols to private property because we're going to take them off of public property, which is a great point. She's not saying that we're erasing history or that you don't get to celebrate racist traitors to America. You do get to celebrate them, but on private property because this is America.
And also in their proper context, right? I mean, think about the fact that some of these statues are placed in front of courthouses where we deal with a two-tier justice system that's not just based on racial bias, but also socioeconomic bias. I mean, think about how incredibly insulting that is and how much that adds insult to injury. I get it, you guys love your little statues. Put your statues in their proper context. They don't need to be in front of a state house.
Yeah, on the General Lee statues, I prefer generals who didn't lose wars. But she wrote in another post, hashtag flag gone, hashtag Confederate statues leaving, hashtag hate done, hashtag sorry, not sorry. All right, how much do I love her? Let's keep going. She says, so grab your guns and your pickup trucks and drive in circles with your Confederate flags while we buy up your land and make America great for once. Lock those photos in your memory because we're about to tear that shit down. Hashtag bye Felicia, hashtag bye Stonewall, hashtag bye Lee. Okay, this woman is awesome. She's not done yet. She says, and oh, you sound like such a tough guy, but I saw those white supremacists crying when the shit really hit the fan. And she said, because due to the internet and common sense, the lies you feed about superiority will die. They will grow to resent you, referring to their kids. They will grow to resent you, and then they will come work for me and my children who were taught no one is better than anyone else.
Oh my God,
boom.
Heads exploding.
That's right.
Heads
See, now that is freedom of speech. She's not threatening anyone. She's just saying, hey, since you're ignorant, your kids probably won't do very well and they'll work for my kids. Hey, get an education, otherwise this is your fate. The other side goes, me no like education. Me like old racist generals. Me threatened to kill you. Gee, I wonder who won that debate. I can't quite tell.
Yeah. All right, moving on to another component to the story that's relevant. New leaked screenshots of chat conversations of the neo-Nazis that planned and organized the Charlottesville hate rally indicate that some of these marchers, not all, but some of them, were planning on violence. Now, these are private chats that were done on a platform known as Discord, and someone had screenshotted them and shared them with the media. Now, those who are behind the rally in Charlottesville say that they appear to be authentic. However, they are reiterating that they did not support violence. In fact, they said over and over again they did not want people to engage in violence during that protest.
So let me be clear. That's what the organizers of the rally claim.
That's what they claim.
Right, but the screen captures are not necessarily the organizers, but people planning to attend the rally, this Unite the Right rally. So
in private chat channels, they shared advice on weaponry and tactics, including repeatedly broaching the idea of driving vehicles through opposition crowds. After the vehicular attack, which killed counter-protester Heather Hayes, users of the channel actually celebrated the event. Now, there's no indication and there's no way of verifying that the man who ran through that crowd with his car was reading these chats or was involved in these chats. However, the fact that there were individuals who planned on using violence is notable, especially when you consider the type of dialogue that we're seeing among politicians right now in regard to the events that day. Now, hundreds of screenshots of the exchanges were released this week by Unicorn Riot, a left-wing activist group which said they were shared by an anonymous source. The records also included audio recordings of planning meetings. And another thing to keep in mind is after Heather Hayes lost her life,
Heather
Heyer lost her life, they made fun of it by making memes about it. So here's an example of that, also posted by Unicorn Riot. Attendees of Unite the Right in Charlottesville discuss legality of plowing into protesters with a vehicle this is less than a month before the rally. So this is just memes, broaching the topic. And then later on, they made memes making fun of what happened to Heather Heyer.
Okay, so by the way, we say there's no evidence that James Alex Fields had seen or participated in those. There's also no evidence that he didn't. So that doesn't mean you should hold him responsible for that, of course not, or hold these people responsible for what Fields did. But the jury's out on that, and there's gonna be a case against them, and they might find out yet that he did see those things. So it is interesting, as we've told you all along, that fundamentalists are the same no matter what religion or political ideology that they have. They believe in violence. And so we saw the radical Islamic terrorists in Europe running over people with cars and reacted with horror. They saw that and thought, oh, that's a good idea. Right. So when we do our own hate rally, maybe we should run over protesters with our vehicles. And so that's how they flock together. So, and look, the radical Muslims are right-wingers in the Muslim world. They're not liberals, they're not reformers, they're not progressives. They believe in what they call their heritage, their culture. Does that sound familiar? They're fundamentalists and they believe in violence. And now the right-wing fundamentalists in this country have also adopted their specific tactics. And they encouraged it before the march, and now we know, of course, that is exactly what happened in the march. We don't yet know if that's a coincidence, or maybe Fields thought, hey, I'm a Nazi, and so like those Muslims that I hate, I say that I hate, I love what the radical Muslims do, I'm gonna do the same thing. So since they're all fundamentalists, they think alike. Or maybe they just encourage each other. Yeah, let's commit murder. Terrorism is awesome. And by the way, we hate Muslims because they're terrorists. A little ironic to say the least. Look, I don't know about legal action about the people who posted memes. I don't. So let's leave that aside. Even if Fields was in the room, in those chat rooms, even if he saw it, even if it encouraged them, I'm not sure that you should hold those people responsible legally for posting memes or speaking out there. Again, there's the issue of inciting violence. But for the moment being, I think the most important thing is this is who they are. So we can certainly condemn them in the sphere of public opinion that this is not, oh golly gee, we never thought about this, and somebody just happened to run over the counter protesters. No, it's something you contemplated, or some of you contemplated. That's who you are.
We got to take a quick break. When we come back, I'm going to show you a fun video featuring our very own Grace Baldridge. You do not want to miss it. It's awesome. Okay. And then later we have some more stories for you, including Tommy Lauren. Where is she now?
He's a war hero. 5.5 years. He's a war hero because he was captured. I like people that weren't captured, okay?
He said I had small hands. They're not small, are they? I never heard that one before.
Today is truly a historic day with the Supreme Court decision that makes same-sex marriage legal nationwide.
So this is one of those days in American history, it doesn't come along that often, where we have expanded the circle of liberty.
Look, all we try to do on this show, okay, is to give you perspectives, right? So you can get a better understanding.
We need to change our mentality and understand why these people are trying to leave their own countries and everything that they've known, everything that they've built.
Yeah.
It's not to come here and harm you.
Anytime you force someone like they did in Arizona to carry their paperwork, it's to remind them every day that they do not belong in your society.
Now that is the sound of fascism beginning here in America.
Doesn't that scare you? Don't you see history repeating itself? That xenophobia and faux populism to get people worked up to attack outsiders.
That is violent rhetoric, and your violent rhetoric translates to violent actions. If you don't get that, well, you're either in denial or you know it's true and you just don't want to admit it.
What's the message we're sending to the rest of the world? I mean, give us your poor, you're tired, and we will greatly mistreat them under horrible conditions where some of them will die. That's not what the Statue of Liberty says.
If you asked me to come up with something insulting to Latinos, I couldn't have done anything like this. I wouldn't have thought to insult their grandkids.
2/3 of the people shot when they're unarmed were blacks and Latinos. That means they were wrong. They're like, who cares? Shoot them, shoot them, shoot them, shoot them.
Look, my dad was born in Syria. My dad could have stayed in Syria and he could have been a victim of all this, right? And the thought of the United States saying no to Syrian victims, I don't know, it makes me incredibly emotional and incredibly angry because I think it goes against what this country's about.
The fighters, the warriors, the ones who go the extra mile, in this case literally, to provide for their family and to look for that American dream. And they shouldn't be forced to live in an American nightmare.
Hey, Cenk, what's up?
Aaron, my VCR keeps flashing 12, but it's not even midnight. Go.
All right, back on the Young Turks, Cenk and Anna with you. Abraham Mara writes in, why can't the right be as eager to sell off monuments to racism as they are to sell public lands? To be fair, Abraham, though, some of the right-wingers did fight back against selling off public lands. And they actually, that's the only reason we won on that issue. They scared the bejesus out of Jason Chaffetz. And he's like, oh, fine, we won't sell off public lands. But we told you they'd be back, and they are. Now Ryan Zinke, the Interior Secretary, is trying to sell off some of the public lands anyway. Weston Cruz says, here's an idea. Leave the statues up, but add a plaque to every single one to explain how it's an example of treason and what not to do. Well, then you're not, that's an interesting point. You're not erasing history, you're explaining history then. My guess is that the right-wingers in the South are not gonna be happy about that. Gabby says, imagine if a black legislator said what Jason Spencer did. Neo-Nazis would have already responded with violence of their own. That's the thing, they believe in violence. So they threaten violence, and if you say anything, whether about their threats or you do, God forbid you should do a threat of your own, well, when they do it, they'll say it's empty talk. When you do it, they're like, I had to do self-defense, so I murdered her right away, right?
Yeah.
So it's just a sick place that we've come to. You know, we did that video that you might have seen during the breaks if you were watching live, where we had Trump, one of Trump's rallies, and then Hitler talking. And I remember back then people were like, oh, that's controversial. Don't say that. Well, once again, we were right. Later, he went on to equivocate about neo-Nazis. All right, what's next, Anna?
All right, just want to give a quick shout out to Grace Baldridge, who is a regular fill-in host here at TYT, fill-in guest, I should say. And she is a woman of many talents. She's a great singer, and recently she wrote a song that is amazing. It's called Red Rover, and she also is now starring in a music video where she performs the song. You can find it on her YouTube page, youtube.com/Grace Baldridge has a channel. And what I love about this is not only does it show how talented she is, the people who took their free time to work on this were Irina Nikita, the executive producer of this show. She's the director behind it. Camera and editing was done by Mary, who is one of our editors here, and also Amir Nakui, who's the executive producer of Pop Trigger. He was the producer behind it. So I just want to show you a quick snippet. You guys can watch the rest of the video on your own time. Take a look.
She said, Red Rover, send my love right over. I feel far away and I miss when we were closer. I said, darling, don't hold your breath. I got an anvil on my chest. She said, come closer. Red Rover, Red Rover, Red Rover. Before I broke her, she said, Red Rover.
With like no resources. That's pretty impressive.
It looks really good. Well, everybody check out Grace on youtube.com/poptrigger, where she does a phenomenal job, and also her show Murder with Friends, which you can also get as a TYT member at tytnetwork.com/join.
All right, let's get to some other news. The Obama administration attempted to look a little closer into the issue of inequality at the workplace. And obviously there have been a number of debates about people getting paid unfairly based on their gender or their race. And so as a result, the Obama administration wanted some of the bigger companies and corporations to start reporting what the salaries were within their companies. And now Donald Trump and his administration have come in and they said, no, we don't want to know that information. You guys don't have to report anything. Now, the hope was that the change would help illuminate systemic wage discrimination against women and minorities, a problem that persists in part because of limited available data. So oftentimes when we talk about income inequality with men versus women, there are government statistics that are usually cited, but those statistics aren't necessarily fair because it's not comparing the pay for women versus men for the same jobs. And so this whole thing was about gathering the data and kind of understanding what the potential issue is. Now, businesses immediately complained of the administrative strain the regulation would put on their operations and questioned whether the information would be useful or securely handled. Now, Donald Trump's administration agreed with that, and now they're saying no one has to do it. They, in fact, said that it's burdensome and unnecessary. So.
Yeah, so I actually am slightly split on this, but I'm biased because I run a business. So I'm just being clear about that bias. First of all, you should know it does not apply to small businesses. It doesn't apply to companies with under 100 employees. For the moment being, we have under 100 employees, so it wouldn't apply to us. So my bias is limited, but it might one day. So I think that there are three components that they cite here as to why they killed the bill. And two of them you can argue, one of them you cannot. So they say that it's unnecessarily burdensome. Well, it is burdensome because you do have to actually keep better track and report it to the government. Whether it's unnecessarily burdensome, that's a value judgment that anybody can make. They say it has no practical utility. That part is just not true. Of course it has utility. Even if I thought, well, I don't want to go through the paperwork of doing that if I'm running my business, I recognize that it has utility because then you get a much better sense of whether there really is a wage gap. And maybe you'll find out there isn't. Wouldn't that be interesting? Mm-hmm. So, and so it definitely has utility. That's what drives me crazy about politics sometimes. Everything is black and white. Right. The other side is all wrong or the others or all right or we're all right. No, sometimes it's a little bit of both. So saying it has no practical utility makes you think that either A, you're not lying, but you're obviously enormously biased on this issue, or you don't want to find out.
Right, you don't want to find out, or you don't want other people to find out, right? Because if the Trump administration miraculously decided to actually go through with this and collect this data, it's likely that at some point it would be public knowledge that certain companies are maybe not paying certain people fairly for the same exact work. And so, look, every time this debate comes up, it's frustrating because it's hard to have a strong opinion unless you have evidence to back up your claims. And you can't back up the claims if you're not comparing people doing the same job, if you don't have enough data, if you don't have enough evidence. And so, right now, a lot of it is based on anecdotal stuff. So for instance, something will be leaked online where employees will find out what the salaries are and they'll think, okay, well, how come the women are making less? Or how come the black employees are making less? Those kinds of issues come up, but is this a systemic issue? Is this a societal issue? Is there something that should be done on a governmental level that could help mitigate this? We don't know. Well, some of us can suspect it, but we don't have the hardcore data available to really address it.
Yeah, and we have macro data on wages, and that's why you know that women make less than men overall, but that's not that helpful because it's different jobs. And so, and we've talked about that a lot, which is that it doesn't, just because women make 77 cents for every dollar that a man makes doesn't mean that it's systemic discrimination, because there are more women in different kinds of jobs than men. So this would be more helpful in figuring out if they're getting paid for the same job, same amount or not. Now, at the same time, I think there's another issue with this where they say they have privacy and confidentiality concerns. I do share those concerns. One, a lot of the wages can leak, which I think it's a terrible idea for inside a company. So, and it causes ill will and no one ever sees the full context of anything. If they're making $1 less than anyone else, that's the biggest crime in the history of humanity, et cetera, and it could really sow discord. So I think there's legitimate points against this, against the Obama administration's guidelines on it. And then the other thing that could happen is you could take a company like Starbucks. I'm just using them, picking them out of a hat, right? And things that could be useful and things that might be destructive. So useful is, hey, baristas come in, if they're in the same market, but all of a sudden you see that men are getting paid more than women at the same level. There's just no reason at all for that.
Right.
And so that would be helpful. Now, Starbucks is very progressive, so that's unlikely, but you never know, right? But when you get into the executive positions, well, then could be great variability. Some might be subconscious discrimination that you're not aware of. You're hiring the people that you know, right? And some of it could be, well, that person has a lot more experience and the other one doesn't, or a great number of factors. So then you leak that information and they can, in some ways I'm glad the Trump administration is not gonna have information like this about individual companies. You think Trump wouldn't, leak some of this and cherry pick ones he doesn't like? And so I think this one is a much tougher issue than simply saying that it's the wrong direction.
I think this is an issue that's never gonna get solved. It's just not gonna get solved, right? Because anytime that there's any progress, there's someone with a roadblock. And look, people got all upset because I said some pretty harsh things about female Trump supporters. I don't regret those statements, and I never will. And the reason why is because look at what he thinks of you. He doesn't care about protecting you. He doesn't care about ensuring. He doesn't even want to have the information or the data to figure out whether or not you're being treated unfairly at the workplace. And how is he supportive of you? He sits there talking about how he's looking out for the little guy, how he's gonna bring jobs back, how he's gonna improve the economy, how he's gonna look out for you. He does not look out for any of you. The only people he looks out for are the richest people in the country, the corporate people that he's known all his life. He is the exact type of person who exploited a corrupt political system. And so yeah, I think if you are impoverished or if you're in a tough economic situation, if you're part of a disenfranchised group of people and you supported Trump, that was a really bad move. And I'm not gonna regret that statement ever, because he's proven time and time again that he does not care about you. And this is just another example. This was not meant to force employers to pay anyone anything. It was just an attempt to gather data to figure out whether or not there's a systemic problem that needs to be addressed.
So like I said, we have slight differences of opinion on exactly how we view this, but they're not, if they thought the information was going to come out that the wages are the same, they would have collected it.
Yeah, 100%.
Okay, they're afraid of what they might find out. And of course, when corporate donors say we don't want it, it's not going to get done in the Trump administration. And that's the bottom line. His donors told him no, and he's like, okay, great, we're done with it.
Right. All right, moving on to some developments in the media. We've long suspected that Tomi Lahren was angling for a job at Fox News, and the day has come. She has been hired as a correspondent on Fox News. So she will primarily be a contributor for Sean Hannity's show, though she will also be involved in work on digital product development. So she'll be doing some online stuff. We'll see how she does. She also said in an interview, just to give you an idea of what kind of person Tomi Lahren is, in case you've never been familiar with her, in an interview with Playboy earlier this year, her most important goal was to help make white people less afraid of offending black people.
A worthy goal.
Lofty goal, lofty goal.
Yeah.
We don't have enough of that, right?
Well, why not start a charity on that? Our charity will help you offend other human beings and tear the country apart.
So earlier this year, one of my favorite stories came out, and it was about how she was deleting tweets because they didn't necessarily go along with her conservative persona. And in those tweets, she talked about partying, about popping that pussy, which is not really what you'd hear from like a goody two-shoes conservative woman who's really worried about family values. So anyway,
on the other hand, at Fox News, they might enjoy that kind of talk.
Well, maybe. Yeah, you're right. Now, there were a few tweets about this that I thought were funny, so I want to share them with you. One person writes, finally, the blonde and also racist perspective will also get a voice on Fox, which is funny because obviously there's a ton of those voices. And then Chris Murphy, I love this tweet. You can finally get off your parents' health insurance, Tomi Lahren, and all you have to do is yell at a camera.
Because she admitted that she is actually using Obamacare and on her parents' insurance. But to be fair, it is hard out there for not only pimps, but also for conservative commentators, because if you're not on Fox News, there's The Blaze, which is a blaze. It's about to go down and it's in financial ruins. And besides which, if you deviate from the orthodoxy at all there, you're gonna get fired, which is kind of what happened to Tomi Lahren. And then she couldn't find any other job, so she had to go work for a propaganda outlet. And I don't mean media-wise, it was literal. She went to work at Trump's PAC. So she was being paid to do propaganda for the dear leader.
Yep.
No, that's just literal. And then when Fox News saw that, they're like, oh, you're working for a super PAC to try to, push people in a certain direction because you're getting paid to do that. They're like, that's what we do at Fox News, right? Fox News is the ultimate super PAC for Republicans, so they're bringing her in. She's also said that Black Lives Matter is like the Ku Klux Klan. Of course, Black Lives Matter says, hey, can you please stop killing us? Whereas the Klan thought, we'd like to kill you. So you can see how those two things might be related if you're deeply racist like Tomi Lahren.
So look, this goes beyond Tomi Lahren. I think that Tomi Lahren is a symptom of what I would argue is one of the most frustrating elements of American society. We love to celebrate and reward bad behavior, people who are not rational, who are not logical, who are not educated. And when I say educated, I'm not talking about a college degree. I mean people who talk about issues that they have some knowledge on. She never talks about issues she has knowledge on. She uses inflammatory language, so her videos go viral, and she gets rewarded for it. And so I think it was a devastating realization for me that sitting there and researching and making sure you know everything and making sure you know what you're talking about and making sure that you don't misinform people, that you give them the information that they need. I value that, right? And I used to think that America valued that. America doesn't value that, okay? Tomi Lahren, we were talking about this during the break. Tomi Lahren's gonna be fabulously wealthy. She will be invited on multiple news outlets and organizations. She will be celebrated. Every time there's a political convention, she's gonna be the headliner and everyone's gonna be like, oh my God, Tomi Lahren, she's so amazing. But why is she amazing? Can you sit down and have a conversation with her where she actually says one thing that's accurate and not hateful or race baiting or inflammatory? That's the only thing she does, but it doesn't matter. And anytime there's buzz, you will get rewarded. We actually elected someone based on that, and it's so incredibly devastating.
So all that is fair enough, but I actually think that the establishment media has an enormous right-wing bias. What I mean by that is, if you say ridiculous or hateful things, like Anna pointed out, and you will go on cable news over and over again. Here she gets a contract from Fox News, CNN. Oh, Jeffrey Lord, until you say something slightly. You put the wrong words together, but until you said the magic wrong words, you could say hateful things, you could say racist things, you could say lie after lie after lie. It doesn't matter. If you're a right winger, you can insult CNN to their face, you can say they're fake news, you can say anything you want about them, and CNN will have you back on, back on, back on. They'll have an army of right wing lunatics on. But if you're a left winger, no. You know why? Because they've internalized the right-wing talking point that they're the liberal media. So they think we don't need a liberal on, we have Chris Cuomo.
Right, you're so right. And also, another story that was in the headlines today was in regard to Megyn Kelly and how the network she's working for now is in a panic because her audience is much older than they would like. Of
course. Right? You know what the average age of the Fox News audience is? 68 years old. That's a fact.
Right, so it's just funny to me because people in the media keep drinking that conservative Kool-Aid regardless of their lack of facts, their lack of everything that you need to actually be an authority to speak on something, right? They've completely ignored that because they're all about the buzz, they're all about promoting these crazy people, and then when the audience isn't there, they're in a panic. Wakey.
If you're left wing, you have to be establishment in order to be on TV. You have to say the Democratic Party is awesome. You have to, there's certain things that you have to be very calm. You cannot counterattack the right. Do not speak out against the right forcefully, otherwise you'll be removed from TV. But if you're the right wing, you can say anything you want. There are no rules, okay? So have at it, Hoss. So there's almost no Bernie Sanders supporters on TV. There's a couple of guys that are good guys, very tiny. And then there's some who are fake Bernie Sanders supporters who actually support the establishment. But overwhelmingly, it's Democratic Party hacks and the right wing. Anything outside of the Hillary Clinton line, there's like 1 or 2 people in all of television. So no, the media hates the left wing. And they don't allow the left wing on, but Tommy Lawrence of the world will get contracts to the end of time.
That's right.
Because the mainstream media has an enormous right wing bias. And if you told them that, they'd be like, oh, no way, Rush Limbaugh's been accusing me of being left wing for 40 years. No, you internalize that crap. And you actually, Bernie Sanders is the most popular politician in the country. Shouldn't there be an army of Bernie Sanders supporters on TV? And they'd be hard pressed to point to 2 on all of television.
That's right. It's the way the world works. Anyway, let's do one quick story before we have to end the show. A little bit of good news in California. California is expecting a ballot measure in 2018 that would allow people living in California to vote on legalizing so-called magic mushrooms. These are hallucinogenic mushrooms that have been proven in some studies to help alleviate the symptoms of anxiety, post-traumatic stress disorder, depression. And so the idea behind this is we should make this drug legal so those who want to use it, those who are over the age of 21 will have access to it and won't be criminalized as a result. Now, in order to have this ballot measure on the ballot, they have to have a certain number of signatures, 365,880 to be exact, but they are planning on getting the signatures necessary and getting this measure on the ballot.
Look, I don't know if even California is ready for this in 2018 because there's been so much propaganda against all forms of drugs forever that people are going to go, whoa, magic mushrooms, that's a bridge too far. The reality is you should legalize all drugs, not because they're good for you. Most of the illegal drugs out there are devastating for you. Meth, fentanyl, I mean, you go in some of the legal ones as well. You go down the list. Do not take those. It's incredibly dangerous and will ruin your life. But making them illegal doesn't make you take them less. Every jurisdiction that has legalized any kind of drug has seen a drop in its usage, partly because people don't want to go to a government office to take these things. And so magic mushrooms are not incredibly dangerous. I've never taken them. I don't know the exact effects that they have, but they are more natural. And again, you could make an argument that beer is worse, etc. So you should legalize all of this. 2018, I'd be surprised if they can get it done by then.
I like that people are thinking about it, exactly.
Yeah. All right, guys, we are out of time. We got more stuff for you guys in the post game at tytnetwork.com/join. We'll talk a little bit more about John's trip too, because he was telling me why he's exhausted, and he made a good case for it. We'll explain all that. All right, bye-bye.